It's now my absolute pleasure to introduce Linda Tirado, who I suspect by now probably needs no introduction. She's part of probably the most controversial Q&A of all time in Australia, which is a pretty cool thing actually. So I know many of you will have read her bio in leading up today, so I'll just give a very quick overview, but I was also fortunate enough to be at the VCOSS conference on Thursday and Friday of last week where Linda spoke, and I think really blew everyone away, and I would have to say really changed and set the tone, I think, for the whole conference from that point on in terms of focusing on why actually do we all do what we do, and why are we actually here. And she shot to fame in 2013 after publishing an essay titled Why I Make Terrible Decisions or Poverty Thoughts, really explaining why Americans are stuck in a poverty trap, working multiple low-paid jobs. And I won't repeat some of the things she said at the VCOSS conference that really stuck in my mind because I don't want to steal any of her thunder, but there's certain things that Linda just said, I'm like,
it'll be fine.
but there's just certain things you just kind of go, God, and you just look at the comments that Linda was saying people made to her and think, how on earth, when you're working 3 jobs and bringing up kids and everything else, how on earth can people be making the sorts of comments they are? And also, how can such structural inequities exist that actually basically trap people into cycles of poverty? So Linda has quite rightly challenged this and is making her way around the world challenging this. We're incredibly fortunate to have her with us. Linda's also published a book. It would be remiss of me not to mention this, Linda. I suspect you may not, but I will, because I think you'll have a number of purchases following today around, for those who haven't already. It's titled Hand to Mouth, The Truth About Being Poor in a Wealthy World. Linda's work as an international advocate around really challenging structural barriers that trap people into cycles of poverty speaks for itself. So it's a powerful reminder for Australia to really avoid making some of the decisions that the US has made, but notwithstanding that, looking at some of the decisions that have been made in recent times, it's a powerful reason again for us to look at how we continue to challenge the increasing numbers of Australian people who are moving into poverty as well. So as I mentioned, Linda came to Australia for the VCOSS conference, so we're incredibly grateful to VCOSS for bringing Linda here. But Linda's also been incredibly generous in making herself available to come to Melbourne and spend some time with us today. So if you can please join with me in welcoming Linda.
Hi guys. It's incredibly generous of me to come to exotic foreign countries and be given rounds by, I think, half of Melbourne. So you're entirely welcome, Australia, and I'm happy to come back and be given rounds by strangers in bars anytime you please. It's a really impressive intro, isn't it? International campaigner all over the world. I would add to that I've spoken at the London School of Economics, at Harvard, at Cambridge, basically all of the Ivy Leagues. And what's funny is that my last name isn't Tirado. My last name is actually never been legally changed because when I got married it would have cost me $300 to change it, and I didn't really see the point because the government doesn't care, do they? But I went ahead and changed it on Facebook because that's important. And they don't ask you, hey, can we put this comment that you wrote on the internet, because it wasn't an essay, it was a comment that I was writing to my friends at 2 a.m. about 2 beers in, because beer is central in my life. And it turns out the whole world thinks of me as Linda Tirado, which I think makes my fairly conservative in-laws unhappy. But it does mean that when I go speak, I'm Linda Tirado, the campaigner. And when I apply to those same Ivy League institutions as a college dropout who's only got sophomore experience at a college you've never heard of in rural Utah, they send you nice letters that say, you know, I don't think you're, we have a very selective class. The entrance fees are very high, and you might want to think about the fact that those entrance fees and application fees are non-refundable regardless of whether you're admitted as a student. And then if you call the people who booked you to come lecture their graduate students in sociology because they're teaching your work as canon, they white glove you in. Dude, we would love to have Linda Tirado as a student. Linda Eaton can get bent, but Linda Tirado, oh, we want her. Dude, I didn't get any smarter overnight because I literally woke up from a nap with my kid and I was freaking famous, all right? Like, this was jarring to begin with. But I didn't get any smarter. I didn't get more articulate. I got no more intelligent. My worldview had not suddenly changed, nor did I have more inherent value simply because Ryan Grimm at the Huffington Post read a thing that I wrote online and went, that's pretty good. I think we'll put it on the front page. Nothing about me changed except for pretty much my entire life. Because suddenly, when I said the words, "it sucks to be poor," people thought, oh God, how insightful. Dude, 45 million Americans live in poverty. That's about double your entire country's population. And you think about that, and that's wretched. And the poverty line in America is actually only $11,400, which at your exchange rate, I think puts it at about $14,000. That's considered poverty. So imagine how many millions of Americans are living in not poverty, but it still sucks pretty hard. 2/3 of us live paycheck to paycheck. And that means that no matter how middle class you are, you can live in a nice home and have a nice car and be so far in debt that if you miss a single paycheck for some reason, it's game over. And poverty is not that far away. And so this is a specter that we have dealt with in America. This is a thing that we all know, and one of the reasons that we react so harshly to people who are in poverty, one of the reasons we assume that they are poor because they are stupid or lazy or unintelligent, is because it could be us. And the only reason it's not, right, is because we are smart and we are intelligent and we are hardworking. And if we are all of those things and we have managed not to lose that one paycheck, then it must be down to our skill instead of our luck. And so the thing that I, for some insane reason, am being taken around the world, because I promise you, you could have found an Australian to tell you this, it's luck. Success is a matter of luck, because I promise you, I have been working my ass off since this happened. I don't sleep. I get thousands of emails in a week, and I try to answer each one individually, because half of them are from people saying, I did not know I wasn't the only one. And those emails you answer. You say, I see you. You are not it. It is not down to you. 45 million people cannot be uniquely lazy. 45 million people cannot be uniquely unintelligent. But the more important question is this. Math is a thing that exists. And depending on whether or not you're working on Wall Street, we all work under the same mathematical rules. Half of the country is below average. Half of them. By definition. You can, as my ex-president George Bush said, make the pie higher, which is one of my favorite quotes. Happy to say X. Make the pie higher, half of the country is still going to be below average. If everybody in Australia became a CEO tomorrow and was making $5 million, half of the country would still be below average. And we have got to deal with that expectation. We have got to stop saying, no, there is nobody below average that lives in poverty. That's bullshit. And we all know it because we work in social services. And I, actually being a certified, internationally certified poor person, am allowed to say this. Some of us are jerks. Some of us are wretched people. You know, funny thing, I've been hanging out with rich people for about a year now too. Some of those guys are jerks and wretched people. It turns out averages are a thing that exists everywhere in the world in every sector. So the question isn't how do we make the pie higher? The question is how do we make it tolerable to be below average? What about the people who don't want to be engineers? What about the people who don't care about finance? What about people who don't want stuff? Who are happy to be barmaids or shop clerks or scrub toilets as long as they make a decent living and can go home with their families and read books or play in the garden? How do we make those jobs valuable and worthwhile? How do we find the dignity and the humanity in the below average? Because no matter what you do, half of your nation will be that. How do we take the shame out of being below average? Because no matter what you do, half of your nation will be that. And how do we insert some shame into this idea of, well, I'm above average, so it must be down to me? Dude, no. Do you think I would be standing at this podium in this lovely room talking to you fantastic people, all of whom I'm sure are just amazing and above average? How do we talk to those folks? I would not be here if I wasn't white. I would not be standing up here if I was 50. When I'd written something, dude, a 50-year-old woman writing it sucks to be poor on the internet, ain't nobody gonna pay attention to that. A black person? Somebody in a wheelchair? Somebody that was not born with inherent traits that make me a good public speaker. Somebody that isn't naturally awkward. Somebody with 15 years in the service industry of saying, hi, welcome to Burger King, how can I help you today? I am used to pleasing crowds. What if I had spent 15 years in a mine, doing manual labor, not becoming a public speaker before I became a public figure? All of that is luck. And I work my ass off, I do. I don't sleep. These guys can tell you. If you follow me on Twitter, me and Mark Andreessen, who actually started friggin' Nutscape, have a competition to see who sleeps less. But you know, I sleep more than I ever did when I was working 2 jobs. And my work now basically involves sitting around in my pajamas until I feel like getting dressed with either a cup of tea or a cup of Jameson, depending on the time of day, thinking thoughts that anybody could have, and people call me insightful, which I think is great. Let's keep doing this, all right? As far as careers go, this is a nice one. I will take this, but the fact remains that I worked 2 jobs and went to school and supported my family because I have a husband and 2 lovely daughters, and people called me lazy. Now I literally sit on my ass all day, and people tell me what a hard worker I am. You tell me what the problem is, because that's not right. That is not right. We should not be valuing offices over trades. We should not be valuing the successful over the people that we consider to have no success because their bank accounts aren't quite as fat. Because as it turns out, the value of a person is not defined by the number on that paper. Some of the best people I know have no money because they give it all away. And some of the worst people I know have a lot of money because they keep it all. Weird how that works, isn't it? Weird how we've taken this money and this number and we've made it our value as though it has anything to do with us and isn't largely luck, because I have been on both sides of this mountain. And I can tell you that I work just as hard now as I did before, but now I do it in pleasant surroundings with lovely people who just this morning, and I'm going to sell all of you VCOSS people out here. You're welcome. This morning, I walked in with a cup of coffee to this conference. My job here literally is to talk for half an hour in front of a room full of rapt attention. And I'm going to sit here for another couple of hours. I'm going to learn some stuff from some speakers, and then I'm going to be on panel for 45 minutes. They go, are you sure you don't need more? Are you okay? Can we get you anything? Dude, did you think I was going to be building a house by hand today? Do you see what I do for a living? No, I'm cool. I got some coffee, I got a fresh pack of smokes, I'm good. In Australia, you have, and I've been here a week now, and after Q&A, which, welcome to Australia. I've been here a week now, I've slept rough at night, been hanging out with cabbies, hanging out with shop girls. The thing that I hear is that everybody has the same feeling I did, that you can work as hard as you want, not gonna change anything. People are worried that there is no value to participation because they don't see what it's gonna get them. And they don't see themselves valued because you have a minister who says poor people don't have cars, and 2 weeks later says why don't they get in their car and drop off a resume? Well, sweetheart, one of those things can't be true. I don't care which, just pick one bit of that shittery and go with it. But you have to pick one, don't you? And when you live in a world where people can say 2 dichotomous things at you and everybody goes, yes, very wise. Poor people don't have cars, and that's a good thing. Also, poor people should get in the cars that they don't have and get a better job. Because we all know there's a job line, there's a store that you just go to and they have good jobs and you give them $5 and then there's a good job and you can go to it and thus poverty has been solved. We, those of us in the working classes, we live in a world where people actually think that and hold us accountable to those standards. They really think we can do that. And they look at us. I was working at Burger King, which they love when I give speeches. But this is the service industry worldwide. I was at work, and a woman walks up to me and goes, "Have you ever thought about just getting a better job? Why do you work here? You're so intelligent." I am so intelligent that I had never thought of that. This is a new, can I just do that? That's great. Are you going to hire me? Oh, it turns out she didn't have a job in her back pocket. That's demeaning. That's insulting, right? Why don't you just fix yourself? Well, sweetheart, 45 million people are not uniquely incapable, are they? And if you've got 4,500 jobs for 45 million people, it's not going to work out so well for most of us. That was insulting, but what was degrading was when I was told, here are the 3 phrases you can say to welcome customers into the store. And we're sending secret shoppers around, and if you show the slightest sense of autonomy, you will be fired. And these words are burned into my skull. Are you guys ready? It's my customer service voice. Hi, welcome to Burger King. What can I get for you today? Hi, welcome to Burger King. How can I help you? Hi, welcome to Burger King. Would you like to try a delicious fish combo today? And you have to say delicious? Have you ever said delicious on a headset with like a scratchy speaker? Wait, a what fish combo? I'm sorry. Did you say a desperate fish combo? Yes, I did. And so I'm at the store and I'm working there and it's lunch rush. And how many of you guys have ever worked in a restaurant? Okay, so we are getting screwed on lunch, all right? Like it's game over. I got 2 people called off. I got 40 people in my lobby. And this girl, 19, 20 years old, walks up to me when I was pretty pregnant, like not maybe fat, maybe pregnant, like pregnant, and throws her cheeseburger at me, and forgive me, this is why they call me a controversial and/or raw. But this is what happens to us, and you should know. Throws her cheeseburger and says, "You stupid bitch, I told you I didn't want any fucking mustard." And in a room full of customers, not a single one stopped and said, "Hey, that's not okay." It wasn't what she did. One angry, rude person, that's the service industry, man, you get that. What got me was that 50 people watched it happen and then bought their cheeseburgers from me anyway. And not a one apologized. Not a one said a word, but you know, for the next hour, nobody would look me in the eye. And I had to stand there and say, "Hi, welcome to Burger King. How can I help you?" with that mustard on my shirt. That is what it is to be poor in a wealthy world. And I am here to tell you, and the BBC gave me this hashtag, which, thank the Brits, right? They call it Don't Be America. Because what I am here to say is we are 15 years ahead of you in these trends. We have 1/3 of our economy is now in the service sector. You guys have just introduced what you call casual work, and what a cute word. Words mean things. I have never cleaned a public bathroom casually. It's not, you think casual, you're like comfy jeans and a beer with my friends. You don't think degrading, dehumanizing, underpaid, hot, unhealthy work with no medical care and nobody that gives a shit about you. But that's what you're calling casual in this country. And so I would challenge you to refuse to use the word casual because it isn't, and words mean things. It is not casual. It's unsustainable. How many of you guys, and now that hi, I'm Linda. How many of you guys come out of poverty, have experienced poverty? How many of you guys would consider yourselves lifelong privileged? Got about half and half. All right, I got 2 challenges for you now that I've actually dropped the F-bomb. We all know what's coming next. If you have lived in poverty and made your way up, I need you to not forget. I need you to not class up. I need you to continue to dye your hair green and get extra tattoos so that you can never fit in entirely. I need you to remember that you have forgotten that you do not anymore. Now that you work in an office, you don't know what it's like anymore. You are now among the ranks of people who are the luckiest fucks on the planet. Isn't it awesome? Oh my God, it's great. And if you have never lived in poverty, I need you to remember that despite your education and despite your privilege and despite your intelligence, you are not allowed to walk into a situation that you have absolutely no experience of and say you know the first thing about it. You don't. You know the data. You know the outcomes. You know the people that live there, but you don't know what you're talking about. And to assume that you do, and to treat people as though you do, is insulting and paternalistic. And I've already got one father, he's a Tea Partier, he's also very excited about what I do for a living now. I don't need more. Actually, when everything happened, I walked up to my dad and I said, Dad, the market has rewarded me outsized for my bleeding heart liberalism. I still haven't gotten an answer to that one. What you do is so important. We need people that fix things. Because God knows we're busy. We're exhausted. Do you know that if you live in poverty, it's akin to somebody in the middle class, the stress deficit, the mental, physical effects on your brain are akin to a middle class person. And if you want to experience poverty, let's do this. Don't sleep tonight, and then don't sleep tomorrow night. And then on that third day, tell me how well you're functioning. That is what your clients do every single day. And they manage. They raise children. They maintain relationships. They take care of their homes. They manage to juggle different bosses and different expectations. Poor people are the smartest people I know because most people couldn't maintain that pace. And what you do is so important. When you take some of the slightest bit of that load off, you have changed a life for the better, no matter how big or small. But because it is what you do for work, you get jaded, don't you? You don't want to go to work every day. Dude, this is your job. You are not thinking of it every single day, every single minute in human terms, because nobody can maintain that. Sometimes it's just some stupid paperwork you gotta get done. Every single time you do some stupid paperwork, you are changing a life. And because you have chosen this profession, you are not allowed a bad day. Because what you do matters. And if you have a bad day, you need to not do any paperwork at all. When you miss those boxes, you have the potential to ruin somebody's day. I moved to Ohio. My husband came home from Iraq. I moved to Ohio because we didn't know what to do. He'd just come home, and I fell pregnant, like you do. I don't know if you guys have heard of this baby boom thing that happens. I am living proof. We have what we call a GI Bill. If you come home, if you've served honorably, if you've served all of your military service, you get an honorable discharge, we will, as the United States, cover your education because that is the least that we can do for our soldiers. Maybe you've heard the VA is not perfect. And so we went to Cincinnati, we didn't have any jobs, we didn't have any money, but we knew we were gonna get a living stipend, right? $1,400 a month, you can live on that. Maybe not well, but it was gonna be that kind of student poverty, right? Like, okay, we're gonna do this for a few years, and then like once the baby comes, we'll be eating ramen for like 3 years, but then you'll graduate and you'll be an archaeologist and we're gonna have a life. And then the check didn't come because somebody forgot to mail something for 5 months. That weekly check didn't come for 5 months. And every week we would go in and they'd say it's processing. It says it in the computer. It says it's processing. Sure was on somebody's desk for 5 months. So we moved into the shittiest apartment we could find because, well, what do you do when you have no money? You need the upfront, right? You need your first and last month. You need your security deposit. We bought no furniture because we were not going to live in this apartment for very long. As soon as paperwork came through, we were I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Cincinnati. You do not want to live in the worst neighborhood in Cincinnati in the crappiest apartment you can find for more than you can possibly, like you want to move on up to the east side very quickly. And the check never came. And Cincinnati has a climate that's very like Sydney. I don't know about Melbourne, it's been like this since I got here, but it's very heavy, humid summers. And summer storms happen where you'll just get deluged with like a foot or two of water in a couple of hours. And as you guys know, slumlords are not notorious for great building maintenance. And a pipe backed up. And it flooded our house 2 feet deep, everything we owned. Which, remember, we had no furniture, everything we owned was in boxes on the floor because we weren't going to be there for very long. This was about 3 weeks before I was due to give birth with my first child. And we piled everything we could into the bathtub because we're not done. We piled everything else we could in the car, all the baby stuff, and we went off to a weekly motel, like a little flea bag-ridden place that they very kindly came every day to inspect for bed bugs, which I actually was kind of, thank you, health inspector man. I appreciate your presence here and the job that you do. And that's where I brought my daughter home the first day. And people, I love now. Now, this is beautiful because I wrote the thing and I said when I was pregnant, I was living in a weekly motel. We didn't have an oven. We didn't have it. Everybody goes, how could you bring a child into the world under those circumstances? And I go, let me tell you this story. Because, dearest, I was the poster child for acceptable poverty. That's how I dared to procreate without as much money as you thought I should have. In America, in the middle class, it takes $280,000 to take a child from birth through college. If you are going to question whether or not I am allowed to procreate, I'm going to need a notarized statement from your bank saying that you've got that amount of money in an account, and then we can talk about your reproductive decisions. They really don't like it when I go talk to rich people things. It's great fun. There is no moral difference between taking food stamp money and taking a business deduction for a lunch. Same kind of food. Well, not same kind of food, let's be honest. But it's the same concept, isn't it? Of here's the public purse that we've all paid into, and now feed yourself from it. And the wealthy take steaks and 3 martini lunches, and the poor take ramen and rice. And which do we shame for greed? Whether or not you came from poverty or privilege, I'm going to need you to be a lot more pissed off. I need you because this is what you do for a living, because you are respected, because people listen to you, because people, like I was, listen to you for cues and guidance. Because if you think we're worthless, what chance do we have? I'm going to need you guys to be fighters. I'm going to need you to take class conventions and turn them on their head and say, I'm so sorry, explain to me why Harvard gets so many endowments and I can't get funding for a community college. I am going to need you to explain to me how dare you come to somebody with nonsensical babble and hold them accountable to it. I'm going to need you guys to get fired up. Because if we don't have you, we don't have anything. The job you do is critically important. And I don't know what most of the jobs you do are. I've met, I think, 3 people here. Somebody worked on homelessness, somebody worked on single moms, somebody worked on, everybody's got their issue, right? You represent that community. You are the authority on your topic because even if you don't know shit about being poor because you've never been there, you are in command of the data, aren't you? 700,000 children in Australia live in poverty. How many of you guys knew that statistic before I just told it to you? Yeah. You are in command of the data and the facts and the figures. And if you control the facts and figures, you control the world. Because I come from a country where they said, well, we're going to make up an entirely new financial product. And because we say it exists, it does. And we exploded the world. You can do that with numbers and data. You can do whatever you like. So I am going to challenge you to remember that every single day when you go to work and you have a headache and you just want to go home because you have a date or the babysitter's actually going to show up for once and you might get 5 minutes to yourself. I'm going to need you to remember that if that mail doesn't get off your desk, it might be the destruction of life, and that you cannot know the effect you have for good or ill. I will tell you this too, at the worst, no matter how bad it got, there was a woman in Cincinnati who worked at the social services office, and this is a place with, you know, millions of people living in it and about 20 social workers. These are these people's jobs. I didn't envy them, because by the time we got through the line, we were pissed off. They never saw a happy person because their clients were all so irate by the time they get to see them. What a crushing job to try to help people and they're just angry all the time at you. And I don't know if you guys have noticed, poor people, we're entertaining and fairly loud. If we get pissed off, you know it. Entertainingly mostly, but you know it. And this woman never forgot that we weren't the client before us. She always said, I'm so sorry you've been waiting. And it didn't matter what the last person had said or done or felt, what their demeanor had been, how appreciative they were of her work. I'm so happy to see you today. And I'm so sorry that you waited. I know your time is valuable. Now let's do the paperwork. And just that statement, I know your time has value, sounded to me like I know you have value. I cried every single time she said it. And you have yelled at me for 20 minutes. You know I don't cry. I cried in her office every single time because she told me I had value, and that was not a thing that I ever heard. And so I want to challenge you, when you are making policy, to talk to the folks that are involved, talk to the people that are impacted, say, how do we let you know systemically with this program that you have value? How do we not create more paperwork that you need to do that actually doesn't make any sense or need to exist? How do we make it efficient for you? How do we value you? Because you guys mostly aren't frontline workers. You guys are mostly in social service organizations, right? How do you systemically value your clients? How do you tell people that they are valuable and loved? So, if you came out of poverty, I'm going to need you to remember that you've forgotten. If you came from privilege, I'm going to need you to remember that you never knew. And either way, I'm going to need y'all to get a little bit more fired up. And I'd like to thank VCOSS so much for bringing me here. Feel free to bring me to an exotic country, to have drinks bought me by strange Aussies, anytime you like. I think we've got a couple minutes, yeah? A couple minutes for questions. I know, there's always that minute, like, shit, what do we say now? Yeah. I think we got it right.
Thanks, good morning, Linda, thank you for that. You made a comment that work is difficult to sustain for 24/7. From my perspective, poverty and homelessness is a much harder gig to sustain 24/7, but you don't have a choice.
Yeah.
It's always there, it's always ever present, it's always in the back of your mind. Any comment?
That homelessness is worse than being poor? Dude, this isn't the Oppression Olympics.
That's not what I asked.
Okay, maybe I'm misunderstanding.
Look, I'm just saying you made the comment that work of this type is hard to sustain 24/7. I'm just making the point that when you're looking at poverty and homelessness, that is.
Oh, okay, no, I'm substantially misunderstanding. Okay, cool, my bad. Yeah, like, look, this is easier. What I do is easier now than it ever was when I was in work in the service industry. And when I was in work in the service industry, I felt more comfortable and more pride in myself than when I couldn't find work. And there are different levels to this that people experience differently. The point is always to remember that your skin is white, that you have privilege, that you have whatever your privilege is, you have it, right? Remember that. Value it. Dude, if you have a penis in my country, you get paid 26 cents more an hour. What the hell is that? I mean, and I love men, don't get me wrong, but I feel like we're misvaluing some things here. If you have white skin in my country, you get paid 44 cents more. What is that? Dude, that's not even like a fun thing. It's not even a practical thing. Remember what your privileges are and understand, and that's why I say remember that you've forgotten, right? Because a month out of working in the kitchens, I wasn't waking up with a migraine every morning. And it took me 2 weeks to realize that I wasn't waking up with that migraine. And I don't know that I would have realized if I wasn't actually looking at it and trying to figure out what the effects of all this were going to be on me. When the bad goes away, it slips away quietly, and you have been trying to forget for so long that you let yourself. Everybody living in poverty is trying to get to a place that they can forget, because, dear God, that's the dream, isn't it? Is to wake up and not have your back hurt. Why the hell would you fixate on your back hurting? So remember that you're privileged to have forgotten. Also, I just really like using the phrase professional Olympics, so let me say thank you for giving me an opening to misunderstand and say that. But it's funny, isn't it, that we do in social services or social justice movements writ large of like, well, I'm a better ally than you because I have done X. Honey, that ain't how it works. You cannot center disability rights over the Black Lives Matter movement. There is no way to gauge relative oppression, right? It's all equally bad, thank you very much. And our job should be to end the oppression, not to figure out who is most oppressed. That doesn't get us anywhere except for infighting.
So within that subject...
You're going to have to speak up, honey.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Okay, cool.
So Bridge That Poverty, Dr. Ruben Payne...
oh, isn't she a sweetheart?
Absolutely. It talks about situational poverty and generational poverty. So I think, what you're just saying, some of us like myself went through a period of studying single parent situational poverty, knew I would get out of it, knew I was educating myself out of it, and knew I had the skills to support it, and I would run my way out. So generational poverty is another level. So there is levels of poverty where maybe we're aware of dignity, but if you've never seen dignity walking at the end of the day, your father providing for the home and self-worth, you've never seen it, how do you know to strive for that? So I think that's what is so important about the work we do is introducing that and saying, self-worth and dignity, giving that at the basic level.
I don't think we need to teach that. I don't. I think that every human being has a need for self-worth and dignity, and every human being has that spark, and it's not a question of here's how you feel that or here's what it is that you're meant to feel. It's taking away the shame so that it naturally flares to life. So situational poverty, and this is actually a nuance that I have to talk about in America, and I generally skip over it with social workers and people who do this for a living. In America, you are likely to come in and out of poverty 6 times over the course of your life, no matter how well off you are, unless you're, right up there. Generational poverty is a different thing, where you're likely to go out of poverty 6 times over the course of your life as you get, a good year, right? That one good job. I don't think we need to be taught dignity. I think we have it. I think it's an inherent trait, isn't it? Every human has value over every other human, and you can't say this looks different and feels different and sounds different, and so it is different, because what's the question? Are you oppressing the human spirit somehow, right? Are you telling somebody that their value is lower? Kiss my ass, you're wrong. And that's the only answer, isn't it? If you are telling somebody that they have less value than somebody else, the only answer to that assertion is kiss my ass, you're wrong. And anything more polite than that is giving dignity to an asinine assertion. But it all looks different, doesn't it? And the fight that we have, and the reason that we talk about single moms, and we talk about disability, and we talk about racism, and we talk about all of the different ways that you can be oppressed, is that each one needs special handling because it all looks different. You can't have a policy that says we're going to be anti-racist and that is going to help people in wheelchairs. That's also stupid and ridiculous. But the fight against disability discrimination is the same as the fight against racial discrimination, in that you are not looking at somebody and saying, how do I help you be a full human? What do you need? How do we take away the barriers that are stopping you from feeling that self-respect and that dignity? And that's going to look different depending on what it is you're talking about, isn't it? But the fight, God, the fight is always the same. And that's a nuance. It's a nuance that we can't talk about outside of these rooms, I think. And I think that's the cue, or that's the last question. So here, I'm going to tell you this, guys. My email address is bootstrapindustries @gmail.com. And if you have thoughts, if there is a way that I can be helpful to you, because what is important is this work, you guys let me know. Cool? Thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much to VCOSS for holding this conference.